What's going on, you guys? Bring your friends here. Today I am bringing you a video to hopefully show Mesmer some love and get it back on the right track in terms of balance changes. This video is going to be going over not only Mirage, but the core trees and Chronomancer as well as a few weapon changes also. So let's just get into it. Also, special thanks to Zeromus and Reckless for helping me, bounce back ideas and make this list what it is. So let's just get started. So we're going to start off with Mirage. And the first one, I'm just going to be bouncing all over the tree. It's not going to be going right to left, so don't expect any type of, this in terms of how that's concerned. Alright, so going to Dune Cloak. Dune Cloak right now is striking nearby foes, removing a boon from them, gain a copy of any boon removed. And obviously use sand shards when Mirage Cloak ends. The problem with this trait is that it only appeals for any type of Mesmer build that's like straight up in your face. It doesn't like apply for, say, if you're using Scepter or Greatsword. So the idea I had was the following. So Dune Cloak, whenever you successfully ambush, remove a boon from them, gain a copy of any boon removed. Boons removed 1, number of targets 5, radius 180. So it's the exact same thing, except when you successfully ambush. So basically, that just means that regardless of what type of Mesmer build you're playing, you're always going to benefit from this trait, because as long as you have Mirage, you have Ambush, and as long as you successfully ambush, you get to use Dune Cloak or Sand Shards or whatever you want to call it. So I think this is a well-needed change, because it doesn't really pigeonhole you into playing one build that's like basically requires you to be suicidal, like if you have a great sword, for example, if you wanted to play range or whatever the case may be. So moving along to Nomads Endurance, this is probably the biggest change on Mirage that I have here so far. Right now, Nomads Endurance is Shatter Skills give Vigor, and Vigor grants condition damage. What I changed it to is you gain 1 second of Vigor per illusion shattered. Vigor grants condition damage 150. So essentially, the functionality of the trait has remained the same, except you get a second of Vigor per illusion shattered. So the whole idea is that you obviously want to promote you just getting illusions out in the field and then shattering them. Right now, it kind of promotes just mindlessly shattering, because you don't even need, it's just a flat Vigor amount regardless of what you have, which I think is stupid. Like, if you just shatter, doesn't matter if you should be rewarded for the amount of illusions you have on the field when it comes to Vigor. And at least with this, as long as you have all 3, you should get a second of Vigor for each one. I actually did think about making it to where you successfully shatter, but it doesn't really make much sense, because it wouldn't apply like that for every shatter, especially distortion. Because when it comes to distortion, your clones technically don't even go after the target. Like when you hit distortion, they just stop what they're doing and they don't really track. They just immediately blow up and you get the distortion effect. I mean, if they happen to be on the target when you hit distortion, of course they're going to be within range of that, but it didn't really make sense in terms of this trait. So I basically made it to where as long as you have illusions out in the field and you shatter, you'll get a second of Vigor for each one. So that was kind of the mentality behind it. Mirage Advance, that is the next one. Deception skill. Shadowstep and unleash an attack that dazes your opponent. Actually, I'll just read what it does now. So, Shadowstep and unleash an attack that blinds your target and nearby foes. You may reactivate this skill and return to your original position. Mirage Retreat. Return your starting point and leave behind a clone in your previous location. What I suggest gets changed to is Shadowstep and unleash an attack that dazes your opponent. Daze duration 1/4 second. You may reactivate this skill to return to your original position. Mirage Advance has no cast time, skill cooldown 40 seconds, break stun. So it becomes a stun break on the first portion of the ability. And then the second part, Mirage Retreat, return your standing point and leave behind the clone in your previous location. The break's enemy targeting has been removed. So the exact same thing as before, except there's no enemy target breaking, which, in terms of just chiming in on this, I personally hate the whole mechanic of enemy targeting. I honestly wish it would just be removed. Like, especially when Mirage first came out, they just like regurgitated enemy target break on like almost every ability, and it was just completely cancer to deal with. So this is no different. I just like when it comes to deception skills in general. I mean, I actually made a few changes to Mirage Advance and Crystal Sands later in the video, but all of these are just like the only thing that's really gotten some play is like Illusionary Ambush. These three are just like completely gone in the Shadow Realm. Nobody chooses them for good reason because there are other utilities that are just worth taking over deception skills. So I figured I'd give Mirage Advance a stun break with a daze and kind of like a port. But the thing with Mirage Advance is that you need a target in order for the stun break to happen. So who knows? Maybe that's a stupid change, but that's basically just what I came up with. Crystal Sands redesign. That is this guy right here. Right now, this is probably the largely considered the worst deception trait. Drawn shards of crystal sand that confuse foes and pass through on their way to your target location. The shards form a mirage mirror upon reaching their destination. So what it is just like this big field, and it just hits people 6 times, has a possibility to hit 6 confusion, and then leaves behind a shitty mirror on a 20-second cooldown. Nobody takes this, it's garbage. What I redesigned it to is Crystal Sands redesign, destroy your clones, and create a mirage mirror for each illusion destroyed in its place. Cooldown 40 seconds, half-second cast, range 900. So the exact same thing as before, except you get rid of the damage altogether, the damage and the confusion to this. So like say for example, if you're fighting someone and you have clones right there, you just click this, and then if there are any clones in the AoE, they get turned to mirage mirrors. So it basically turns it into like a defensive like functionality, sort of, for the most part. But there is a, I believe I put a half-second cast on this. Yeah, half-second cast, range 900. So this has the opportunity to pull off some sick-ass plays, and personally I believe that people would spec into Crystal Sands despite it having a 40-second cooldown and a half-second cast, because as long as you have clones on the field, you get to turn them into mirage mirrors without even having to spec into it. So personally I think that's worth taking. And that's pretty much all of the changes I have for the traits in Mirage Tree. The thing with Infinite Horizon, even though I don't like the trait anymore, just because when they gutted most of the ambush abilities, Infinite Horizon kind of became useless as a result. It's still good for power, but for anything else, I don't really see it getting much play, other than the fact that it just helps your clones to live long enough for you to shatter them. But when I come up with a solid workaround for Infinite Horizon, actually no, I did. I have something on the list. One idea was that every time you win over a Mirage Mirror, you would get 5 stacks of might for 6 seconds. That was the change I had for Infinite Horizon. I completely forgot about it, I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, if you guys have any ideas on what you would like Infinite Horizon to be, I'm actually quite interested. Just leave a comment down below, and we can have a nice little discussion regarding it. Alright, going over to Axe. Lingering Thoughts. So that's the first one. So right now, Lingering Thoughts is spin forward and strike multiple times, inflicting conditions and leaving a mirage at your starting position. If an enemy is near the mirage when it expires, a clone is summoned. And then obviously you get damage, cripple, torment, number of targets 3, max count 2, charge recount, combo finisher whirl, yada yada yada. So the problem with Lingering Thoughts and Axis of Symmetry, these two are kind of linked in terms of my decision to change them, is that, in my opinion, the evade is in the wrong place. Like, I don't think the evade should be on Axis of Symmetry. I think the evade should be on Lingering Thoughts. Because, like, if you use Lingering Thoughts, like in a team fight, for example, you're just fucked. Like, if you don't build up, like, a few seconds of distortion before you use this ability, then you're just completely dicked. Like, you don't really get no benefit out of this, because you're going to be taking so much damage that it's not even going to be worth the investment. So my idea was, for Lingering Thoughts, spin forward and strike multiple times, the exact same thing. Max count 2, evade half a second, activation time half a second, count recharge 14 seconds, up from 12. Combo finisher whirl, same thing, range 130. And then, yeah. So basically, I'm taking the evade, making it a half a second, and then right now it has a 3-4 second activation time on Lingering Thoughts. You trim that down to the exact same time as the half second evade, and then you up the count recharge by a few seconds to compensate. Because technically you would be getting a fourth of a second more of evade with this proposed change, but in my opinion it would balance out just because the count recharge is higher than before, so you wouldn't be able to just spam it once you swapped weapons, for example. And going over the axis of symmetry, I'll just read it for you. You and all your axial and shadow step to a random location around your target and strike, applying confusion. This attack breaks enemy targeting. You and your illusions change focus to the targeted foe. Damage is 444. Player confusion 3, and then 1 clone per confusion that hits the target with axis of symmetry. Breaks enemy targeting. Obviously no more evade with this change. And then what else did I have with axis of symmetry? Let's see. My proposed change is you and your axial shadow step to a random location around your target, strike, applying confusion and blind. This attack no longer breaks enemy targeting or evade. You and your illusions change focus to the targeted foe. So as I said, no more evade, no more enemy targeting, and add a confusion, or not confusion, but add a stack of blind and call it a day. And I believe the yeah, it's not AoE blind, it's just a single target blind, so there's no AoE radius to it. So yeah, overall, half second activation time with Lingering Thoughts, half second evade, count recharge to 14 instead of 12, axis symmetry, take away the evade, take away the enemy targeting, add a blind. I think with those changes, Axe would be a lot less clunky to use, especially when it's with its main damaging portion of Lingering Thoughts, which doesn't get much love. It's a huge risk to take when you don't have distortion ahead of time. So I think with this, everything would balance out for the better. Let's see. I think that's it for Axe. Moving along to Chronomancer. Now, as you all know, Chronomancer is a steaming hot pile of garbage. Nobody takes it after the patch to where it took away self-shatter and it took away distortion and gave us a budget distortion on top of our continuum split. Regardless if I think this change is absolute trash, I am trying to bounce around it in the best way possible. I talked to Reckless and Zromas about this quite a bit, and regardless of what changes we were able to cook up, one thing is absolutely clear, and that is, in order for Chronomancer not to be trash, the self-shatter needs to be reverted. There's really no way around this. Like, I get it if distortion you think is just some hotbed of cancer for whatever reason, despite my argument that getting rid of distortion gets rid of damage, boon uptime, condition, cleanse, anything that you can spec into that gives you any sort of those things. For example, shatter concentration, master fragmentation, line dissipation, ineptitude, so on and so forth. Like, distortion, fine, I get it if you really hate it that much, but when it comes to self-shatter, it just needs to be reverted. I know ArenaNet is not very lenient at all when it comes to reversion, but this is one thing that needs to come back in order for Chrono to be playable. Right now, I mean, fucking cheerleading spec Renegade has more value than Chronomancer right now, and that's pretty pitiful to say. So, obviously, self-shatter needs to be reverted. The next thing I have on the list would be Continuum Split, the base cooldown reduced to 80 seconds. Tides of Time, which is the shield ability. Let me throw on a shield real quick. Basically just make the functionality like before. Right now it just feels like extremely clunky that you have to aim it. Personally, I enjoyed the old functionality of time to time, so I would like to see it reverted as well to its same state as before. Illusionary Reversion, which is this guy right here. Shatter skills generate a clone if you have enough clones present. Require clones reduced from 3 to 2. Flow of Time, which is this guy right here, is joined into the first minor passive that is Time Splitter. So this guy gets moved into this one. So Flow of Time is gain alacrity for each clone you shatter. And then Time Splitter is just gain access to Chronomancer shatter skills and wells. So these two become one. So this is open. So that means that I wanted improved alacrity to get... right now it's alacrity applied to you is stronger, but has a reduced duration. Take away the duration decrease and just keep the base recharge speed at 50%, and then move it into the passive where Flow of Time is currently. And then now you have a trait that is unallocated. So basically I cooked up a trait which is called Chaotic Insight, which is your wells now convert 2 boons on enemies to conditions on the final pulse. There's not really too many traits in here other than All's Well That Ends Well that actually improves your wells, so I figured it would give it a nice damaging state of mind or style to it on top of the healing to give it more play. So that's basically what I came up with, Chaotic Insight. And that's all I really had for Chronomancer. Just change the shield functionality, move Flow of Time to here, get rid of the duration increase on improved alacrity, move it to here, make a trait that converts conditions or boons and conditions on enemies on the final pulse of wells, 2 of them. And then that's pretty much it. I think that all those changes would make Chronomancer playable again. And not the bunker cancer shit that I made season 1, but something hopefully fun to play. We'll see. Going over to inspiration. Restorative Illusions. This guy right here. Right now, it's heal yourself in loose conditions when you use a shatter skill. My suggestion to this is make it to where it affects allies as well. Let's see. Radius 240, number of targets 5, and then the healing is the same. No clone heal 240. 1 is 612. 2 is 804. 3 is 996. Yeah. And conditions removed 1. I think that would put a interesting twist on Mesmer, because right now there's really no support spec that Mesmer can really tap into, and just being able to give your team just raw healing and condition clear would be quite the sight to behold, in my opinion. And then the only other change I had for inspiration was restorative mantras. Right now it's heal allies around you when you finish preparing a mantra. Healing 1770, number of targets 5, radius 360. I changed this to restorative healing. Heal allies around you when you successfully cast your heal skill. Base healing 1770, same thing as before. Number of targets 5, radius 360, with a cooldown of 20 seconds. So with this restorative healing, you would actually get a lot more use out of it than mantras, in my opinion, just because, everybody has a healing skill, and you don't really have to pigeonhole yourself into finish preparing a mantra, which mantras, in my opinion, are just largely unbalanced. And with this, you would see a lot more play if you did not want to either A, go for the res utility and medic's feedback, or B, just go for the contingent transfer on sympathetic visage. So that's all I had for inspiration. Going to illusions. So before I get into illusions, I want to touch up on Connie Mesmer for a second and explain kind of the bumpy road it's been on. So the way Connie Mesmer has been before, especially with the change on Blinding Dissipation, it was blind on shatter. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a lot of condition pressure, especially with ineptitude was just blinding dust confusion, and this had no ICD either, so you can just mindlessly spam your shatters and get good output regardless of what shatter it was. I didn't agree with that, just because it's just like, especially with like daze and distortion, if you're going to make a condition based build based off shatters, it needs to be either the F1 or the F2 abilities. But the problem with Condi, or power for that matter, is that for as long as we've known it, it's always been either everything does conditions, and we don't really get to choose. Like, we've always had a power-based shatter regardless if you're playing Condi, and the same thing if you're power. Like, it didn't make sense. So my idea behind what I'm about to propose next is changing up the shatters themselves based off what tree you're in to complement the type of build that you want to play. So going back to illusions is malicious sorcery. Malicious sorcery is just a oops, there we go. It just increases your attack speed while wielding the scepter, reduces recharge and scepter skills. So right now, the thing about this is you can delete it, and if you really wanted to make a change to scepter, you can just take malicious sorcery and just apply it straight to scepter, because scepter is pretty garbage right now anyways. It's like a free opportunity to make a new trait that would benefit Mesmer, at least the way I had it overall. So right now it's called malicious sorcery. Replaces your F1 shatter, destroy your clones, bleeding nearby foes. The shatter effect also occurs at your location. Damage 135, bleeds per illusion 2, radius 240, bleed duration 2.25 seconds. Conditions have an extended duration if the target is bleeding, 25% increased duration. So basically what I did, let me get out of Chrono. So what I did is I took the damage from Cry Frustration, moved it over to the F1 ability, so it doesn't do increased clone damage. Like, it's not a power shatter anymore. It still does weak power damage, but now it does bleeds based off how many illusions you have, and a condition modifier if you have bleeding. Personally, this is the way I want all shatters to go, depending on the tree that you're in. Like, diversion and distortion are used for utility, not for damage. And then Cry Frustration and Mind Rack are tailored to your specific needs based off the tree that you're in. So that's why I want to see Malicious Sorcery change to that effect, because it gives you a condition-based shatter because you're in illusions, which is primarily for conditions. And yeah, that was mainly the idea behind it. So moving on to also Shatterstorm. Need to touch up on that a bit. So Shatterstorm is Mind Rack becomes an ammo skill. Basically, I just renamed this to your F1 shatter becomes an ammo skill, meaning that if you take Malicious Sorcery and you change your shatter, you'll be able to benefit from it with Mind Rack since it becomes an ammo skill. I just didn't want the text to be lost in translation, essentially. Just wanted to make that abundantly clear for that. Domination. Egotism. This garbage-ass trait that nobody uses and nobody will ever use. I basically made it to redesign a shatter skill as well. So your F2 shatter, which is Cry of Frustration. I lost it. There we go. Your F2 shatter is replaced with Egotism. Egotism, destroy all of your clones, damaging nearby foes. 1 clone damage. So I took the power coefficient from Mind Rack, copy and pasted it onto Cry of Frustration. So, and then the only thing I did on top of that was, I keep losing where I'm at in this page. There we go. And then increase damage to targets with vulnerability. Damage versus vulnerable foes, 33%. So basically, it's like a Mind Rack that you have to set up for. Because, say for example, if you Mind Rack somebody, and like say if you interrupt them, or if you have Rending Shatter, you have vulnerability now on your target. Or if you daze them or stun them, you have 5 stacks. With Cry Frustration now, it's basically your shatter modifier. Like, okay, my target has vulnerability on them. I'm going to use Egotism, which is the name of the shatter now. And since that has that 33% modifier versus vulnerable foes, it's going to do even more damage than before. But yeah, this is where I want shatters to go. I want like Domination as power, being able to spec into a shatter that gives you a different type of approach if you're playing more power-based. And with illusions, I'm giving you a option if you're playing more condition-based. This is where it needs to go. And then diversion and distortion, just leave it alone. That being said, main the dissolution, shatter inflicts torment on hit. Obviously, it'd be a hypocrite if I said that I would not want this to be on diversion or distortion, because I feel that you guys just need to give us an opportunity to spec into our own shatters, because this is the same dilemma we've had before when it comes to you nerfing Blind Dissipation or Ineptitude, for example, because with the blind on shatter, it was just all of them, which in turn went into confusion. So even though I didn't have this on the list, I just thought about it now. If you're going to take main the Disillusion off of diversion and distortion, which you should make it 2 stacks of torment on Mind Rack and Cry Frustration, just because you're not getting rid of the damage, you're just splitting where the damage is going, which should be your 2 damaging shatter abilities. Moving on, I think the only other change I had was just for offhand sword, and that was, let me get a sword. So right now, my problem was with Phantasmal Swordsman. Perform a sword strike and create an illusion that attacks your foe. If the sword strike hits, you gain might. I have no problem with the damage or anything behind this skill. It's just the approach. Like, this guy takes a fucking walk in the park. Look how long that takes. Just in case you didn't see it, let's do it again. This guy goes and takes a fucking trip to the beach, orders a margarita before he fucking goes and attacks his opponent. This is fucking stupid. This needs to appear on top of your opponent, just like Greatsword 4, for it to have any sort of viability at all. And I think that's pretty much it in terms of me going over all of these trees. I think, let me get out of combat here real quick, or attempt to. But yeah, a few changes to Mirage and Chronomancer, and then like 1 or 2 changes to each core tree. And I think Mesmer would be in a very healthy place. With Mirage, it's just changes to Dune Cloak, definitely No Man's Endurance, and seeing a little love to Mirage Advance and Crystal Sands. Chronomancer, this is just a recap. Reverting the Self Shatter, buffing Illusionary Reversion, moving this guy here, moving this here, adding new an ability there. With Illusions, adding a new Shatter in place of your F2 ability, or no, F1 ability, I'm sorry. With Inspiration, adding some team-oriented skills to the mix. And with Dom, adding a new power-based Shatter, and then fixing the Phantasm on Offhand Sword 5. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have any comments or anything to say, if you think I'm crazy or a fucking idiot, or if you think I'm awesome, let me know in the comments down below. It took probably like a week or so with the help of Zormus and Reckless to make this possible. So hopefully this changes Mesmer for the better. And yep, I'm Colin Spring, your friends. You guys have a good one.